Today I want to show you 3 ways you can use your voice for more than just lead vocals. Turn your vocal into an instrument. By the way, if you've watched a few of my videos and you like them, will you check below to make sure that you're subscribed? Cool, thanks. The human voice is both beautiful and versatile. So if you find yourself only using vocals for lead vocal, harmony along with that lead vocal, and then maybe doubling the lead vocal, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to create really interesting and completely unique sounds for your productions. You could quite literally build your entire production around a foundation of some vocal tracks. If you've never tried it, it's really fun. Or you can use vocals as a nice additional kind of sprinkle on top of an existing production to give it that last little bit of, oh, that's interesting, to push it over the top. Today I want to show you a couple of ways to do that. Whenever I produce a song and I'm thinking it needs something else, the next question I ask is, does it need something that's melodic, something that's harmonic, or something that's rhythmic? Melody, harmony, rhythm, the foundations of really anything we do in music. The human voice can check all of those boxes, and we're going to show you specific ways to do that in this video. By the way, this is the third section of my ultimate recording checklist. If you find yourself stuck in the studio, you keep recording the same old things, your songs always sound the same, download this. This will give you kind of prompts to give you new ideas of things to record, of ways to produce your music, to make it really interesting and engaging and unique every time you sit down to record. Go to homestudiocorner.com/checklist to get your free copy. Okay, goosebumps alert, because this is something that I get really excited about. For me personally, I'm a musician and a songwriter and a producer, and I wear a lot of hats, including this one, which, by the way, it's NASH for Nashville. That's where I live. I know the order is weird, but it's a thing now. I wear it now. Anyway, one of my core competencies in the studio is my voice. So I can play guitar, I can play keys, I can produce, but my voice is one of my kind of unique abilities that I try to lean into when I produce. That's the foundation of what we're going to talk about today. You don't have to have a super incredible voice to take advantage of the stuff I'm going to show you today. A lot of it's really simple and easy, and what's great is you're creating something that no one else will have because you're doing it with your unique voice or your singer's unique voice in your studio, and it's kind of a bespoke process to the specific song you're working on. What am I talking about? Let me show you by taking you on a bit of a tour for one of my songs where the entire album, this was a 4-song EP, the entire EP, maybe 5, was built around just my voice. I had written a lot of songs and released a lot of music with me and a guitar, me on a piano. That was it had become a little bit boring to me, so I wanted to write some songs using only my voice, meaning I would create a rhythm track with my voice, then I would create some sort of harmonic thing with some chord changes or something in there that would kind of cue me to what the melody could be, and there would be certain melodic elements as well, and then I wrote the song while listening to those vocals. It was a really cool, unique process, one of my favorites, and it's become one of my most popular EPs that I've released. It's an EP called Fighter, and I want to take the actual title track from that song and take you on a little bit of a tour. So let's jump in. Here are a bunch of the vocals. These are actually the actual vocals that I recorded on the day I wrote the song with the intention of just replacing these later, but I ended up using them in the final production because they sounded fine. And even though there are some flaws and some weirdness in there, when we had everything else recorded, I said, these are great. I have no reason to go back and re-record these. So how did it work? Well, the first thing we're going to talk about, thing number 1 today, is you can use your voice as a rhythmic element doing what some people call beatboxing. Now, before you write me off, say, Joe, I'm not one of those beatboxing champions. I'm not either. You don't have to become great at doing the whole like that whole thing. If you want to, great. That's not me, and that doesn't have to be you either. You can build a really cool beat using only your mouth. So for this song, I really wanted it to be really simple. I wanted like a 4-on-the-floor kick drum, and I wanted some sort of a hi-hat sort of sound. So I grabbed a microphone, ran it through a preamp, cranked up the low end on the EQ on the preamp because I had an outboard pre with a low EQ on it, and then just kind of messed around until I got a sound that worked for me for a kick drum sound. So a boom sort of a sound. This is the sound that I came up with. So you can hear it's about 2 measures before you can hear it repeat right here. And the way I'm doing it is it almost sounds like, what are those? Is it the tabla drum? The drum that goes boom, boom? It almost sounds like that for some reason. I don't know why, but that's the way the booms were happening that day. Now, by itself, super boring, but we're building something. And the goal, for whatever reason, was let's build it without any instruments. My hands are free. I'm just clicking on a mouse and using my voice. It was really fun. So then, on top of that, I just created a very, very simple hi-hat track, just going into the microphone. And the way I like to do this is to record 1 or 2 bars, listening to a click track, to get something that sounds pretty in time. I probably cleaned up the timing even more, and then just take that 1 or 2 bar phrase and loop it as much as I need. I'm not sitting here going boom, boom, boom for 4 minutes. Ain't nobody got time for that. I just try to get a good 1 or 2 measures, so there's at least a little bit of variation. You can see looking at the waveform, these are all slightly different. That makes it helps it to feel human versus having a single boom sound that's exactly the same that repeats all the time. We have 8 of them that happen before the repeat. And with the hi-hat, we double that. We have 16 of those sounds before it starts to repeat itself. So it keeps it feeling a little bit more unique, and combine those together, you get. So that's as simple as it can be. You could add another one where you go ka, and that becomes your snare sound. You can do lots of these things, and you can just create them, align them to the grid, and just like copy and paste and move things around to create your beat. If you want to get even more crazy, you can bring in a drum machine plug-in and assign those different sounds to different pads on the drum machine. Then you can play your beatbox if that's something that sounds like fun to you. Those are all the options. For me, I just wanted something real simple. And once I had this going, I started to bob my head and think, what does it need next? And the first thing that popped in my head was this needs some sort of a melody. That's the next place that we're going to go. So thing number 2 is use your voice to create what I would call like synth pad sounds. So synth pads are great. I think if you go listen to just about any of your favorite albums over the last several decades, you're probably going to hear a lot of at least subtle pads underneath a lot of the music. Maybe not for like super heavy rock stuff, but for a lot of pop and things like that, pads can really create a vibe and fill in empty space in the song. What's better than a pad? Making your own pad using your own voice. In other words, making like a background vocal stack that can be very unique and, like I said, bespoke to the song. So create the number 2 is creating your own vocal pads. And for me, a vocal pad is less of a chord progression and more of a collection of parts that work well together. Let me say that again. Less of a chord progression. It's not so much that I'm just singing a C chord, or in this instance, an A minor chord, then an F chord, then a C chord. It's more I'm singing a melody, then I'm singing another melody that goes with it, and then maybe a third sort of melody, harmony that goes on top of that to build things out. So the first melody I came up with was, I believe, this one, and I recorded it once. I liked it, so I recorded it twice. So that sounds like this. Very simple melody. That works out nicely. You can hear the edit where I copied and pasted it because I never intended for this to be in the final version, but I did. So once that was in place, I listened to it, sang along with it for a little bit to come up with something else that can go with it. So sometimes if you've got a part that moves like this, you can record a harmony that moves exactly with it. You typically don't want if you record like 4 or 5 parts, you don't want them all to move together. That starts to sound a little weird. So if you can have them be different parts with slightly different melodic and rhythmic elements to them, all the better. But first, I thought this needs a harmony part. So I recorded 2 parts, panned one left, and then recorded it again and panned it right to add a harmony on top of this existing melody, which sounds like this. So just went up a third and just followed that simple harmony part. Then I wanted a third part because I typically can't stop when I start doing these things. And instead of being something else that moves exactly the same, I wanted something that drones more. So it's something that just holds out notes, preferably up high, and ended up coming up with this part here. By itself, super simple, probably a little bit boring, but when you combine it with the other two parts, it's really interesting. It's becoming a thing, right? It sounds like kind of a cool synth pad that you have created with a keyboard and a virtual instrument. And then when you add in the beat, it starts to have a really interesting feel. And we haven't touched an instrument yet. This is just a microphone and my voice. And then finally, I thought it needs a bass line, because it's hard to tell if there are chords underneath, and if there were, what would they be? So I played around with, I might have played it on my guitar a little bit to find a progression. Then I recorded this bass line to go underneath. In the final production, you probably don't hear this vocal part very much, but while I was in the songwriting process, being able to hear this kind of chord progression underneath with that bass note helped me kind of figure out how the song was going to go. So this is the final piece of the puzzle, just a low single bass line that I just sang. And just like that, we've created it's really just a 4-bar phrase that loops, and we can repeat that throughout the song. So the way that played out, I let that play for the intro of the song, and when the chorus comes around, I introduce those background vocals again, that same thing that you heard at the intro, and instead of being a chorus that's just drums, bass, guitars, vocals, now it has this interesting other part that works really well.
If life is one big disappointment, then maybe I'm doing this thing right. But if this all points to something bigger, then I'll get back up and fight. I'll get back up and fight. It knocked me down.
Now, you could have easily played that on a synth pad, and the song probably still would have been great. But for me, knowing that, like, hey, that's my voice times 8 or 7 or whatever it is, and knowing that, like, that was something that I made specific for this song, and then you kind of zoom out a little more, and this entire EP has stuff like this. It's like a collection of me's singing some cool parts to go along with the song, and it's something no one else could ever do in their songs. Now, could you overdo this? Sure. I did an EP like this. I try not to do every project that I do starting this heavily on vocals, but if you've never done it before, this could be a really fun way to make your songs more interesting and engaging. And all you need is your voice and a microphone and maybe a little melodyne as well. Okay, I'm glad you stuck around for number 3, because this one is really fun. I bet you didn't know about this one. So let's take this existing vocal that we created and let's see if we can use it to create something else. What do I mean? Well, here is that first original vocal. Can we do something with that and take that vocal and actually literally turn it into an instrument? Yes, you can. Now, this is a Studio One specific thing. I don't know if other DAWs can do this, but I'm going to do it here and show you. First thing, I'm going to hit Command M to Melodyne this. So here's Melodyne. If you're not familiar, Melodyne Essential comes with Studio One, and it's just tuning the voice. So what I can do is I can say, let's go really aggressive, tune it all the way to the center, and I'm going to clean up that first note so that it's just kind of a clean beginning. So what does that look like when we close out Melodyne for a second and just look at the actual waveform? It has this kind of overlay. What does that look like to you? I'll answer that in a second. Next, let's bring in Presence, which is just a virtual instrument inside of Studio One, and let's find some sort of a pad thing. Cooking Fatness sounds perfect. Perfect. So we have a virtual instrument here. We have an audio track with Melodyne on it here. What am I getting at? Check out what happens when I drag this down. I'm dragging an audio track with Melodyne on it onto an instrument track. Check out what happens when I let go. See those? Those are MIDI notes now. Because Melodyne knows what pitch it is, it automatically creates a MIDI note just kind of hiding there, waiting for us to use. So now with that MIDI note here, I can just press play. And since it's MIDI, I can come in here and I can adjust the notes up an octave if I want to, or probably easier would be just to come into the virtual instrument and take it up an octave using this transpose knob. Up 12 should be an octave up. So even if you would say, I'm not a singer, if you can carry a melody and you're not a keyboard player, you could sing your part in, drag it onto a MIDI track, and now you've got MIDI. Or if you can sing and you just want the extra cool sound underneath, you can have them both play at the same time. Now, if you don't use Studio One, I don't know what to tell you. I assume other DAWs have ways of incorporating this, but this is just built in. Pretty great. So there you go. Those are 3 ways you can take your voice and turn it into more than just a lead vocal or a harmony vocal by doing rhythmic effects with beatboxing and things like that. Harmony effects, creating your own pads, and even taking your vocal and creating a literal synth based on the notes that you sang. If you like this video, you'll love this checklist. It's free. Just go to homestudiocorner.com/checklist to get your free copy. And if you want to see more about how to make your vocals sound professional in the mix, be sure to check out this video. Thanks for watching. See ya.